kingdom. Greetings and God's richest blessings be multiplied to you and to yours, beloved family. You're tuned into part 2 of Healing Our Land's broadcast, continuing our conversation with my brothers here from Transformational Prison Project. And we are excited that they're here post-traveling. Where'd you guys just come back from? DC. And what was going on out there?
Work, man.
Okay.
Work.
Non-stop. Work, right?
Yeah.
That's what's up. Well, I appreciate you guys driving, not flying. You drove, right? All that way, came here and are with us for these 2 hours. So thank you, brothers, and thank you, our listening and viewing audience. And again, you can be a part of the conversation. Call us at 617-282-0685, 617-282-0685, or write us at 670 Washington Street, Dorchester, Mass. 02124, or email pastorfranklinhobbs@gmail.com. For myself, if you're interested in contacting Transformational Prison Project, you can reach
Bobby.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Yeah, you could just email me at bobby@transformprison.org, and I'll link you up with the right people that you need to talk to, right?
Outstanding. So again, Transformational Prison Project. Now it still is happening inside MCI Norfolk. Yes? No?
Take it away, Bobby.
So this is complicated.
Okay.
So there is still restorative justice programming inside MCI Norfolk.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we're not able to go in there due to our records and politics, right? So there is restorative justice programming that birthed from TPP inside there. As right now, we are not physically inside there, but the men that we did the work with while we were on the inside are there running programming and restorative practices.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just the same systems that we built, the same people that we built with. They're all there. It's just that we're not there, right? And other individuals are like in those spaces where reality, it would be ideally if Bobby was there as opposed to, say, Sarah Jane, right?
Real talk. No, and that's something we have to advocate for. Again, these are some of the structural things. And the reason why that's a challenge right now is because that the way the law is convicted felons cannot associate with other convicted felons, correct?
Is that the law right now?
I'm asking you.
So I don't think that's the law.
Oh,
I
okay.
think only if you're under supervision. So if I'm under parole supervision, so I wouldn't even be able to interact with Bobby if you were not an employee of TPP and we didn't work together as co-workers. Other than that, I could be in violation. It would be a contraband relationship. I'd be in violation. And like I said, I could go right back to prison without any due process.
Amazing. Contraband association.
Yeah.
Where they come up with this stuff?
I mean, contraband could be anything.
I guess.
Yeah, no, it really can. Like literally. So, I mean, it could be this little remote right here, right? It's just whatever you want to call it, it's contraband.
Wow. And so again, it's really amazing, right, to hear one, the grace of God, right? Because hearing your stories, the fact that God has given you a unique anointing is what I call it, right? Though it's challenging, it's been hard, but it's been something that has given you a unique anointing, right? The impact, the effectiveness to be able, like, this is not a job. This is not something that you're just doing to make a check, like, right? This is something that you're doing because you're called to do it. I would submit before you were ever formed in your mother's womb. I mean, God, this is a faith-based kind of, this station's in the lower level of a church, right? And so it's biblically grounded, right? So, but yet community-based, which I love about that. Our pastor was the first black clerk magistrate, right? I believe here in the city of Boston. Literally, would have people deferred from the court to his custody, to the church, and this is where we should be doing, right? And so now here he is 74, I think, years young, and God's given him this multimedia platform. Right. And this is something that he wants to transition from being senior pastor of the church over 20 years to this. And then to have this go to another level, because we've got youth and young adult who technology is their language.
Yeah.
That's how they communicate. That's their literacy, is technology. So using this to be able to amplify the voice, Healing Our Land did a broadcast called The Church of the Midnight Hour here on this station from 11 p.m. till 6 in the morning. We did that for years. Right? We leased time on an FM station that gave us a broader reach because many people who are incarcerated only have access to terrestrial radio, not the internet, but they could have a radio. And so a brother, Eric Kennedy, who you guys, I think, have met. Yeah, he was at the summit. Do you guys remember Brother Eric Kennedy? You might have met him at the event.
I'm bad with names, so.
Okay, well, Brother Eric Kennedy is a gentleman who was formerly incarcerated, and I met him while he was incarcerated. And he went through several different institutions, but stayed connected to us via this broadcast, The Church of the Midnight Hour.
Yes, remember now.
Remember now?
Yeah.
So, and I've heard other people literally who've been in solitary confinement, but even there, you have your radio, right? Or you can. And so they've been tuned in and be able to have inspiration and information, right? And even if and to be able to have your voice heard. So you're writing letters. Eric Kennedy for 5 years wrote letters to us, and his letters were aired on the air. And he had other people who he would have call in. They request songs, and so forth and so on. And then from that 5 years, he actually came to the church and joined the church, became one of our members here. He now serves on the board of directors for Healing Our Land. But again, by the grace of God, I've not been incarcerated. So here's a brother. So whenever I'm talking about doing, and our programming now is largely focused on reentry. And so, but that has to be, I get my guidance from people who have had that experience, just amplifying that voice. Right, and being able to now implement programming that's going to do both prevention and intervention. So hearing these kinds of things that you're talking about, so for you guys to be able to go back in, because many times people who have been incarcerated, now we're trying to go back in, and these are the ideal people to go back in to talk to other brothers, but they block you. So you all have been blessed to be able to have the opportunity to be even in Nashua at South Bay. We're going to believe for you that the door is going to open for, what did you say, Concord?
Department of Corrections.
Any Department of Correction. Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter where it is, But, and like I said, it's crazy how we are fully cleared. We have actually literally dudes going inside Department of Youth Services with ankle monitors on, right? That are serving life sentences, and they're walking inside there, running circles with young men that are incarcerated. Wow. And it's easier to get inside there than it is an adult facility. And it's kind of backwards. And I don't blame nobody for it. It's just the way the system's set up. Yeah. But I think that it's time to try to change things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the first thing for people to be able is to be aware, right? Because that you're giving us some critical information that people don't know. Nah. We've got to do this constant education. Again, that's why I appreciate this platform, because we can learn, right? And once we learn, now we're awakened and we get an understanding. Now we can have a different perspective in being able to how we respond to restorative justice. Restorative justice, I absolutely love that those practices, right? Because this is what we did, with our ancestors, from what I understand, in the motherland, right? And I believe, quite candidly, that all life comes from the motherland. That's just me, right? And because even in the Bible, in the beginning, God created, right? And we understand, if we look at the Garden of Eden and so forth, you'll understand this is not a racial thing. This is just a factual thing, right? Scientists will tell you that white comes out of black. So we're one human race globally, right? So we got to get past this, I'm against you, you're against me. As human beings, we're God's prize creation. So with that said, in Africa, I believe that they had those restorative. I went to Rwanda and had the opportunity to learn about the whole genocide. Talk about restorative justice.
Yeah. The power of it, that's power.
Yeah.
And that's been going on since forever, right? That's building community. That's actually having dialogue with your community, right? We don't do that anymore. Oh. And that's been long gone for a very, very, very long time. And that's why we were so divided. That's why things are so corrupt and misplaced, and the systems are so broken. Or maybe in place the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, there's
either
debate
way.
on multiple different ways you can debate that, right? But
Yeah.
I think restorative practice is the way to go. Like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Dennis Everett, as you both know, is my brother-in-law, and I believe he is the head of restorative justice as it stands right now with EOPS, right? Which is again a miracle.
Yeah.
Even in that,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and his whole thing is about working with Andy Peck and these other folks. And I understand Andy Peck's a different kind of undersecretary that's much more progressive, and they're trying to humanize, right? That's even just to humanize, right? These settings, right? We need to repurpose houses of correction. I'm an abolitionist, and I probably shouldn't say that, but it's the truth, right?
Hey, you are what you are.
I'm an abolitionist.
And there's ways to back that up, right? You know, people don't fully understand what it is to be inside there, right? There's nothing allowed inside there besides incarcerated people. So it's what you're saying. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's just about education and educating people on what that means, right? And some people because words are very powerful. Right?
Yes.
Some people take them in the wrong context, right? But all I say is do your research, figure out what's really going on. You know what I mean? And how they're treating people. You know, and I don't mean and when I say things, I'm not down in a specific institution or people that work there in no way or shape or form.
Sure.
Right? They're part of that system as well.
Yeah.
I just think the overall way that things are run on security based systems does not work, you know? I mean, it might work to an extent for maybe people that are working there, but I think a lot of damage happens to the people that work there as well.
Absolutely.
So, you know, mentally,
Yes.
I mean, I think Massachusetts has one of the top suicide rates for
Correctional
individuals.
officers. That's what I hear.
Yeah, and it's like,
you can't treat people any kind of way, and that doesn't affect you.
Yeah, and they're seeing the same thing, right? And just like culture is something that is in everybody's lives.
Yes.
So it's like their families sometimes have been like, you know, born into that part of it too, right? It's a lot of them are related, and it's the same thing when it goes on the other way around, right? So it's about education, and that's why I love that you brought up, you know, Dennis's name. You know, like he's really trying to change the system in a positive way for everybody. Actually having restorative circles with correctional officers and people that are incarcerated, like how powerful can that be, right? But then there's a security thing, right? It's like, hey, you can't get too close, right? Because of security issues. So it's like, how do you balance that and get that to the right point and try to look at everybody as human beings, right? And I think, you know, people are scared of that.
Yeah, they are. But again, when you humanize it, right? And people, I'm hearing this all the time, that people are saying, when I actually talk to people, right, and hear their stories, like they have these ideas, and it's because of the media. The media has the super predator, you know, we got to keep you safe, right? The big bad boogeyman, right? Like, this is what the media has done. If it bleeds, it leads. Racism, classism, all that stuff is entrenched in it. Right. So this is why, again, I appreciate this platform that's media, that we can be able to counter that narrative by you actually hearing and building relationship with people. You get to hear their stories, right?
Absolutely.
So again, back to this whole state of emergency healing and empowering movement that Healing Our Land is committed to trying to help be a part of. I'm really interested in how Healing Our Land can partner with TPP, with other entities. As I shared with Brother Armand and yourself offline, that, you know, we have this vision of doing these healing circles and all this kind of stuff, the restorative justice practices that become a whole culture, right? That's a piece of it. But also housing, also mental health, as you talked about, also, you know, all the things that we need for a person to be able to thrive, right? As community, how do we heal and to mature, and then to use that as this movement to be able to do prevention because we have community right now. People are just so me and afraid in their own little bubble, right? And they're not going to be able to engage with other people. But it seems like post-COVID, from my perspective, I may be curious to hear yours. It seems to me that people coming out of COVID now, everybody seems to be like in their own little bubble. But like it's just they're only focused on me, got having conversations and this is everybody all at the same time. So our interpersonal skills and how we interact with each other was already a problem before COVID, and then post COVID, I just feel like it has amplified. So solutions, right? So there's lots of resources. This is the most fiscally sound this state has ever been. Money is not the issue. It's how are we going to use those resources. I believe we have a once in a generation opportunity to use some resources as seed money to be able to build this institution that can economically sustain itself, that's not dependent upon funding from how money flows. The color of money, is it equity, is it capacity building, is it technical assistance? Like they have these buzzwords for funding, and oftentimes, no disrespect, when we're talking about getting money from the city, the state, or the federal government, or even even philanthropy, sometimes as you become chameleons to try to fit the funder as opposed to create the vision collectively that we do what we do in excellence in community and concert, and we go for a collaborative proposal, right? So there's a piece that everybody has that they're bringing, and there's resources for everyone, so we're not fighting each other for crumbs, but we're coming together to be able to create the vision and implement the vision and be able to sustain the vision. So I want to talk a little bit just about, from your perspectives, what are some of the things that we might need in challenge and imagining, right? We know housing. Go ahead. Oh, I thought you were going to say something. So housing.
That means he wants you to talk.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how does some of that vision look as you guys know some of the things that we need? Even as I talked about some of the brothers who I met at Harvard, it broke my heart. Here we are at Harvard, and here are these brothers with all this wealth of experience, at Harvard, speaking on a panel. While that's nice, the truth of the matter is, one of the brothers doesn't have a place to live. Yeah. One of the brothers needs employment. Yeah. Like, that's absurd to me. Yeah. But in this place, I could see this hotel, right, built by returning citizens. These are the elders, right, who should be able to be in this place, and there's other people like him. So, talk to me.
I'll just say like two things, and I want to like just reiterate the point that with our organization, Restorative Justice, we don't like push anybody away. We build relationships, right? Like I just said, we humanize people. Yep. And I could tell you just from being in the largest prison that Massachusetts has to offer, right, with the most long-termers and lifers, the worst of the worst. That's the place where you have the most interaction with police officers coming in there, DAs coming in there, judges. I mean, those are unheard of relationships, right? And they're being formed, and that's in that environment. And I say that to say this. I want to say two things. Like, if you come home and you can't have food, clothing, and shelter, how can you focus on anything else? If you ain't got food, clothing, and shelter, and you can't get it through legitimate means, and you're struggling, most people are gonna revert back to what they know, right? Sure. Get it. Yeah. And I will just say, like, we always talk about mass incarceration in this country, and we know they built prisons. I don't believe they think it's gonna make this country safe. We know it doesn't. One thing that's like really overlooked is that in the last few years, like, Massachusetts has decarcerated at a higher level than probably anybody else. I mean, they almost half their prison population. But other major cities around the country had an increase in violence, when Boston didn't have an increase in violence. It's the only major city, I think, that didn't have an increase in violence. And I can name 20 people who I know who are literally people who've been convicted of homicide, multiple homicides, and they've literally been decarcerated or they're at home in the last 2 years. And what most of them have in common, they all been through the same programming that we went through, and then they come home with the intention of like continuing to do more harm. They build connection with their community, and they know that it's just like the healing process happened, so they move in a way different fashion than they would have moved had they not been healed, right? So I think a lot of that has to be taken into account, and people don't even take that into account. It's kind of like, even though all those things that is happening now, they're still trying to build more prisons in Massachusetts. They still want to open another prison. It makes no sense. Nah. Somebody told me something, and then when he told me, it just like really like clicked in my mind. He said at this point, Massachusetts Department of Corrections is a jobs program.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a jobs program. You can't just like you said, you want to refurbish the prison, you have to refurbish the workforce as well. Yeah. Or they're going to continue to fight for their livelihood as well.
Yes.
They don't want to not have a home. Yes. Right? So I mean, it's all these has to be like addressed at one time, or are you going to be pitting Bobby against Armand, Peter against Paul? Or they feel they're going to have to be pitted against each other because their survival is contingent upon the other one not getting what they have, right? So what they want, I should say. So,
it's interesting you say that because a few things, Fool. As you said that, I'm trying to remember what it was. Now you were saying, help me, Holy Spirit. So the pipeline, basically, right? So and the people who are the staff who you got to train that. So for me, somewhere it says 700,000 people are released from incarceration, right? And it says let's hire them, right? So this workforce, I understand right now that electricians and plumbers, a lot of the trades things, they don't have enough. This building boom that's happening, they do not have people who have the skill set. You see my shirt that says Trades Not Triggers, right? So giving people, that's T. Michael Thomas from the People's Academy, and like training people how to be coppersmith, but these things that you can make a living wage. To tell a person stop selling drugs and work at McDonald's, I mean, this is not realistic. I don't think. You help me.
You're gonna have to work at 3 McDonald's at full rank.
I'm just saying.
No, but it's honestly right. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
I mean, so let's be fair. Let's be honest. So if you're gonna tell someone, you need to give them viable alternatives. Right. And so with this building boom that's happening here in the city of Boston, the truth of the matter is I don't believe enough returning citizens are being able to get those skill sets to make a living wage. Now you're making a living wage, as you said. But even with that said, if you don't do that healing part, because you can get the job and now be making good money, but if you haven't done that healing work, it's not but a matter of time before you're going to because you still haven't done that's the big piece is the work.
The thing is that they said trauma will rob you. It doesn't matter what you give me. If I'm still traumatized, if I could be easily triggered, no pun intended, I'm going to trade all that in for whatever I got. And I realized that when I was incarcerated, like I know some of the greatest people doing the greatest work, but the last big retreat we had before we left the prison was one around sexual harm, right? And I know men in here that literally their leaders, like, I look up to these dudes, and they be like, you know what? If somebody called me a feminine attribute, they like, no, I can't take that. They would be literally throw their life away because this is a literal throwing away. Like they going home probably next month, but if somebody called them,
that's enough to trigger you.
Exactly. That's for me, that's like a prime example of somebody being traumatized, never healed from a trauma of sexual abuse that happened to them, and letting them rob them of literally their life. So you gotta couple the two. I made a decision when I was incarcerated that I felt that I had to choose between education and restorative justice, because I had to go through so much programming. I had to be so far engaged. I couldn't do the programming in BU. I couldn't maintain the workload and maintain working on myself at the same time. And not to mention, I was carrying trauma from the education institution. So I'm being taught by and I learned this in restorative justice. Like the first trauma of abuse of power that I ever experienced was from somebody in the education field.
Wow.
So I mean, like once I was able to like address that, I was able to navigate more easily with people who were academics, and like I had to literally like process that in a space. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to get what I needed to get out of an academic space because I was like triggered by that same classroom that most people would probably be happy to be in. I wanted to be in it, but I couldn't be in it and be myself. So, and the thing with trades in Massachusetts is crazy because I remember when I went to prison, there was a lot of stuff you was available. Again, it coincides with the removal of the right to vote. All these trades and all these programs were removed.
That they used to have inside.
Yeah. You was able to get a welding license as late as 2016, I think. I remember because the class I took welding. When I started the welding course, you was able to be licensed. By the time I completed the course, you could no longer be licensed. You could only be certified,
Wow.
which is a big difference.
Yeah, it is.
And everybody that was in the class took it for, including myself, we took it for the purpose of getting licensed. But midway through the class, they transitioned from a licensure to a certificate program. So,
Wow.
and it makes no sense, like you say, especially in Boston when you're always under construction.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
New building.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that could be a workforce that could solve like,
Absolutely.
and everybody wants a job when they come home. Everybody and most people just do any job they could do just to get out. Right. They may push for something better once they get out, of course, which is the right thing to do. But everybody would take a job just to get out.
Just to get out.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, formerly incarcerated people are the best workers.
Yeah.
This guy I can't. He has to force me to take time off. I'm serious, you know.
The work
Like,
ethic is.
we want to work. You know,
Yeah.
like people, we want to live. You know, like, and on top of it, that's part of like our dream and our passion is to heal communities and bring our work everywhere. But we really want people want to work, and people stumble across a lot of issues when they come home, and it's even with trades or construction and stuff. You do a background check. Sometimes that doesn't pan out because you have another company doing that background check, right? That's a whole other aspect that stops people from getting jobs. I just talked to an individual the other day. He started this training for some construction company, and he was in the second day of the training. They came up and they said, "Hey, your background came back, and we can't have you here." And he's like, "Hey, I know guys that." He's like, "What came back?" And he's like, "Oh, firearm charge." He's like, "That was 10 years ago." And I know people that have firearm charges that work for this company, right? But it was a different department in that company, and they do certain background checks for certain things, right? So and it just blows my mind. On top of that, it's like, why not give an individual a chance? And that stops a lot of people from doing a lot of things. It's just that background check in general. And to go back to it earlier, what people need is money and jobs, and housing and mental health support and community and being able to eat and clothe themselves, right? And that's what to bring it all, what we all should be doing and working together on,
Yes.
And it's like, one more quick thing I would like to add is that another thing that is an obstacle for individuals coming home is, once again, mental health, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because when you're inside there, all mental health professionals are mandated reporters, any caseworker, any psychologist, whatever you want to call it, and the mental health system is really a joke. So if you go to somebody and say, "I need help, I need something," that goes directly to your record and will go on your parole or probation or parole hearing. Right? So people are already hesitant when it comes to doctors in general, even if it comes for physical doctors, right? Like for your physical health, not just your mental health. So when individuals come home, it's very difficult for individuals to actually get the mental health services that they need. They say, "Hey, try this mental health professional." Right off rip, I'm getting triggered. As soon as I sat down with somebody, I got triggered because they were like, "Wow, you did 12 years in prison? How old are you?" I'm like, I was like 32, you know what I mean? But because I did so much time, maybe, jail, juvenile, makes you look young. I don't know what it is, but still, it's I'm already nervous already. I know they don't mean by it, but as soon as I say, or as soon as they look at my record or I talk about my incarceration and what it might be, I can feel. We've been in prison. Failing in vibes are something that you survive off. I can feel immediately their face, their body, everything change when I talk about incarceration to them. And that immediately puts me on guard. Like, why is this person getting scared, right? People aren't even trained to deal with long-term, short-term, anything incarceration when individuals come home. So right off rip, you're getting triggered and you're going to shut down and not say anything to this person. And the people that I did open up to, right, like that, they couldn't even comprehend what I was talking about. I didn't even break the ice.
Right.
And they try to diagnose it PTSD. I didn't even know what that was. Like, you know what I mean? But
yes,
it's like,
yes.
you know, there's a lot of things that as a community we need to get together to make it better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's to educate people on incarceration, right? Instead of just like, hey, just locking people up or having that tough on, you know, crime thought, man. You know, like when you make laws harsher, that doesn't stop people from committing crimes. That just locks more people up. Mm-hmm. That doesn't do that, right? Mm-hmm. Educating people stops you from love. Circling around people, building communities is what stops people from being locked up. Mm-hmm. And we see it every day when we step back into these facilities, right? Mm-hmm. The laws change. Maybe I'm going to make the gun laws more stricter. That's not going to stop guns. Nope. Making these communities safe for these young people is what's going to stop it, and building community, right? Because a person doesn't pick up a gun because they want to hurt somebody. A person picks up a gun because they're scared and they don't want to die.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. No, this is wonderful. And so we're talking about what do we need? What are we envisioning? And I love what you're saying, because even as we get people who are going to, because trust, right? Trust is a big thing, right? And you build that. Y'all built this trust, right? And so this is the thing with this, with what we're building has to be a place of integrity, character, holding each other accountable, right? Because, and from that, people will experience the uniqueness of the authenticity of this real intentional healing and empowering movement, right? That becomes a center and a space, and that energy that you're talking about, right? That people will feel, and then we can just build it and build it and build it, and you know, more momentum will be able to, but to be able to have clinicians, as you're talking about, mental health folks who are returned citizens, can let's get a pipeline, right? So you got people who can go into,
out there.
I'm just saying, it's out there, right? So we do know people who are clinicians. I mean, one person comes to my mind is Denise Watson.
Of course.
You know, a returned citizen who's seasoned, who's doing that, who built relationship, I guess, on the inside and on the outside, and has the expertise, so that when a returned citizen shares with them the tip of the iceberg, they're not gonna freak, but they're like, oh, I got you, you know, and they can continue to get to the bottom of their issues. And so creating that, right, to be so be able to have that as your being able to, and then replicate that, because we need more Denise Watsons.
Absolutely.
Right. And so one of the things I heard from the Office of Returning Citizens, and had the opportunity to be able to really work with Office of Returning Citizens since its inception. And quite candidly, you know, I knew of the Office of Returning Citizens before its inception here in the city of Boston, because it was in D.C. Yep. So I met brothers. I'm part of something called CURE, Citizens United for the Rehabilitation of Errants, an international movement for human rights and prison reform. And so that's where I met this particular brother from Washington, D.C., who was really instrumental in creating the Office of Returning Citizens. But the franchise had, the formula was the Office of Returning Citizens has to be run by who? A returned citizen. Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, it just is what it is. When it came to Boston, the model got a little distorted, right? So it's here, and it had no budget initially. You know, Bob Turner and God rest his soul. Oh, help me, Holy Spirit. What's his name?
Sibley.
Huh?
Sibley.
No, there's a brother that worked with Bob Turner who passed away.
Rupert.
Rupert, thank you.
Man, I forgot he passed away.
Yeah, man. So Rupert and Robert were running it, right? And so when they had no resources, so we were going there doing piecemeal, being able to go to our people through the Healing Our Land over the air, get $25 donations to be able to get a money order so that people could get their mass ID. Like, it's absurd. You're coming out of incarceration and all you have is a prison ID.
Yeah.
Like, that's just absurd. And so being able to, you can't function, you can't do nothing. And so being able to have to get $25, then they have to get their birth certificate, their social security, and go through all these hoops, technology. You got to be able to help acclimate them, all of that, to then be able to get them a mass ID. So this was piecemeal that we were doing. And now we were able to be at the hearing at City Hall with Ruthie Lejeune and with Councilor Brian Worrell, who were able to push for a $2.6 million budget for the Office of Returning Citizens. And as you know, some of that went for grants. And that whole process was one that, had a lot of challenges that we're learning from, God willing. And so, but working with the Office of Returning Citizens, again, the difference of our model is very different than the one in DC. So we've got to change that. And the one in DC, we're helping people to get real estate. Right? Housing. Like, that's the trajectory. There was a report here, and one that came subsequent that's even worse, that says black families here in Boston made $8 an hour in contrast to $247,000 for white folks. And it has everything to do with land.
That's crazy.
That made that disparity. So it made sense here in DC. We all started with real estate, right? Construction, real estate. These are the kind of things that would be able to change that disparity. As well as voting, the whole thing that they did, being able to have voting inside the House of Correction. Like, they're doing that in DC. And they, so these are some of the things that we've got to replicate. But here, going to the Office of Returning Citizens, even post getting this budget, hearing them say they had returning citizens and they had organizations that serve returning citizens, and asked the returning citizens. I'll never forget, Dave Mayo asked the people he says, asking returning citizens, what is it that you need? And they were saying, first and foremost, it's scary. As you talked about, coming from maximum to minimum, coming from being incarcerated to freedom, right? And they're saying, so now I'm coming and I'm grateful, but I'm scared. I need support to help me to walk a different way. And people who I can trust, not just anybody. So it's not just resources, random, just throwing resources at a problem, but relationship and trust, community. So to me, that's some of the foundational kind of things. And that comes from people whom, as you said, have that lived experience.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad to hear that that's changing now. I know the Office of Returning Citizens is actually in the process of hiring some returning citizens. And ultimately, again, no disrespect, but I do believe that the formula is that it really optimally should be run by a returned citizen. So those are some of the kind of things I think that as we talk about, just vision casting, what it is that we want to create here in the city of Boston. While we are encouraging people we're in an election cycle right now. Every year there's an election. Every year there's an election. So again, being able to, and we know that folks behind the wall, one, that even as it relates to people who are felons who maybe can't vote, like the African American Coalition Committee, are doing a lot of work to be able to get their family members and other people who can vote to vote for people who are going to have policies and programs that are going to change these systems that are creating the outcome that we're having now. So again, just some of the vision casting. So I want to, I want our listening and our viewing audience to be able to also help us, because we're kind of co-creating this ideal of what we have an opportunity to be able to institute right here in the city of Boston.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to ask one question, like, why isn't there a house for returning citizens, for formerly incarcerated people? There's only one that I know of, and that's for women's, which Stacey does an amazing job doing, right?
Yes.
But there is no
house
just for formerly incarcerated people to come home to. Like, why is that? And I think there's only one in the state, right? And that's in Worcester, that only focuses on formerly incarcerated people. But
Really?
why don't we have one in Boston, right? Why can't TPP have one, right? Like think about that. And it's not even about us, right? It's just imagine if we just focused around that and
Yes.
people coming home. I think the only thing that happens when individuals come home is they get put in rehab or residential homes
Yep.
that's solely focused on addiction
Yep.
and stuff to that extent. Don't get me
Yes.
wrong, people might have addiction
Sure,
problems, but
sure.
what comes first is incarceration problems, right?
Yes.
You got to deal with that first, and I think people are getting stuck in certain places where it's not, they're not comfortable. It's not
Yes.
even about comfortability. It's more about
Not a good fit.
it's not a good fit.
It's not a
right?
good fit.
At all. So
Yeah.
why don't we have a host like that, right? And to even talk about how much money this state has, and we don't have that, but other states have that. Look what they're doing in California. Like, they're changing the whole game. They have houses for people when they come home. They actually have like everybody working together.
Really?
Yeah, politicians, correctional officers, formerly incarcerated. Everybody's working together to try to help reentry.
Where, this is in California?
Yeah,
What's-
look up
what's-
the ARC. Look up
ARC.
Yeah, the anti
Recidivism
Recidivism Coalition. They've been around their 10th year anniversary. I think it's coming up soon, and they built something. Scott Butnick built something that is changing the game out there,
Really?
right? And it's crazy how Massachusetts is backwards. They take away streaks, 3 strikes. We add it. We implement it, right? Because it didn't work out there, right?
Right.
But we add it. But we're a trendsetter. But then everybody does better than us. So it's just crazy. But there's so many things that we can do out here.
Yeah.
That's the best for everybody.
It's the best for everybody. Well, I think we have an opportunity, really, and I think I believe we're gonna do it because even we have. Go ahead.
I want to add
Yeah,
to
please,
that,
yeah.
like, because he mentioned California. Like, a lot of people don't even know, like, TPP wouldn't exist if it wasn't for California.
Absolutely.
Right? Our seed funding didn't come from here. I feel like even in the last, we just really started to get a level of minimal support from people in Massachusetts recently. Prior to that, we had to go to the West Coast to get support, right? So in California, they have reentry housing, not just one, not just two, but multiple houses. Some returning citizens run multiple programs. There's no way that Massachusetts should not be like
No.
leading the
No.
world in not just the country, but the world. In doing that work, and it's to the point where we know how big California like incarceration problem was. It was a mess. It still is a mess, and decarceration was a mess. But they came up with creative ways to like just take care of that immediate need of housing. I mean, they got programs where they actually pair citizens with returning citizens to live in their house, right?
Wow.
Yeah, they came up with, the state gave them money. One guy they gave him $26 million to create programming to pair returning citizens into colleges,
Nice.
living on dorms, like literally.
Yes.
Because they like Bobby came home, Bobby would have been a primary candidate. Like, you know what, Bobby? We're gonna put you on the BU campus.
Why not?
And finish your degree there.
Why not?
And that's the type of thing they're doing in California. And it's not even like we're not even thinking about
Not
that
even
here.
thinking
And
about
this
it.
educational hub. Like,
Yeah.
who's better than us? Than
None.
and
See,
it's just, and people, I think people are just getting stuck. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
they're getting stuck and they're doing the same things over and over again. Like I said, I was in Boston. I was in a reentry house at Parnalease, and I was in what was considered the Taj Mahal of reentry houses in Boston, and it was supposed to be the best one. But like Bobby said, it was a recovery house. They didn't have nothing for me as a person who like I haven't used drugs since '95. I haven't used alcohol since the Million Man March, right? I haven't eaten meat since the Million Man March, right? So it's kind of like me being in those spaces. I literally had to live a lie every day in order for me to be free
Right.
and navigate that situation. When I had a problem struggling with getting on public transportation after 30 years, and nobody in there understood that, they're like, "No, you got to go from some Charlestown to South Boston." I already broke down. I broke down. But the beauty of it from that lesson was that when it came my time to build this organization, and people break down, oh, they got to do that, they call us now. Bobby's taking people places all the time, right? We taking people places all the time. And they could call us now because we know how to navigate that. I know, like, when my boy Vic called me, like, yo, he got off the bus because he felt like he was going to punch somebody because he was stressed out. Well, literally, I could just go get him and like, yo, you know what, let's do this. I know what the problem is. And now he's able to navigate that system with, not ease, but
Better.
better than he did before. But I remember when it was a lonely time and nobody knew what to do or help. I mean, nobody knew what to do. But it's I think I think period, man. Even when and I'm not getting on the office of returning citizens, but I think any effort for returning citizens need to be led by returning citizens.
I'm with you.
Period. Period. I mean, but they said relationships move at the speed of trust. I think reentry moves at the speed of trust. I mean, people look at me, Bobby, Noble, Eric, and they see that we could do it, then they could do it.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people this all the time. I said the biggest example of inspiration I ever got in my life when I was in prison was when I seen Conan Harris come into the prisons.
For real?
With a suit on. I'm like, oh my God, Conan's here with a suit on.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, I could do this.
Yes.
And I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget that day. It was like it's forever.
And he came into the facility with a suit on. In what capacity?
To support restorative justice. He came into our programming, MCI Norfolk at our retreat, and he took over the MCing. He took over the MC because there was a problem that day, and the MC left, and Conan just took over like it was like he never left, like it was his house. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, wow, man, look at this dude.
That practical testimony
I'm like, wow.
of a person who was there, who you've seen. Who
he didn't know I was looking at him like that. I told him many times over since I've been out, but that right there was a powerful moment for me. That it don't matter what program they put me in, what professionals they put before me, none of them would have ever been able to have that effect. That just him just standing there and before me, cleaned up literally in a suit, right? As opposed to being how we remembered him being incarcerated on the same side as us. So,
wow,
it's powerful.
It is powerful, man. It's very powerful, and I'm really, I think we're going to do this, but I don't think it's by. I know that it's not coincidence, it's not happenstance. The varying connections, right? Again, Dennis Everett, who is married to my baby sister, and seeing some, and had the privilege of walking with him through some of his process, and to now see this brother. It's funny, we move in different circles because my sister lives in Haverhill, and he and my sister live in Haverhill with their children in a home, and that's why I'm from New Jersey, but we lived in Haverhill. We moved there and so forth. But then I came to Boston and was doing the work that I'm doing, and he was doing the work that he was doing, and now we're doing the work together. Awesome. And he now is in the EOPS. It blows me away, even in navigating even those systems, because as being a part of the African American Coalition Committee, been working with the Brothers Talking, and now trying to become on the board of the African American Coalition Committee. I've submitted an application. Unfortunately, it was denied because I answered a question. I misunderstood the question. It was like, are you interacting with people who are incarcerated? I mean, yes, I'm a chaplain. I'm a chaplain at Nashua, chaplain at South Bay. Yes, I can't possibly even list every person who I communicate with who's incarcerated. So they denied it for that, and so fortunately, a young lady helped me to write a beautiful appeal letter. And I spoke with someone the first time I went into MCI Norfolk with one of the people who works there, and said, I saw the letter. It was very eloquent. You should be all set. I haven't heard anything subsequent, so I'm still waiting, to be able to get approved to be able to be on the board, so I can go back and be able to continue to, just to do the stuff that we need to do from inside outside transformation of this systems, right?
Absolutely. And I just want to say I appreciate you, Mom. Becoming a volunteer, trying to get on that board. There's a lot of great individuals that are in there, right?
Yeah.
That inspires me every day, inspired me in there, and my hat goes off to you too for just making that effort to go in there, because it's not easy.
It's not, man.
It's not. And there's a lot of obstacles, as you know, you have to jump through to do it. Yep. And it's discouraging, but I appreciate you still fighting that good fight.
Thank you, man. It's my privilege, it's my honor. I'll tell you, going there, and like we went last time, and we went through a bunch of hoops. We jumped through all the hoops, right? And again, Dennis is helping me to kind of navigate, connecting with folks to have to go through their formal process, because we went through all their process, and then we went with State Representative Worrell and State Representative Russell Holmes, who can come in anytime, right? So afforded us to be able to come in. We were on the list, sent the slides via email, so they were supposed to be there. But then once we got there, of course, it was a whole different thing. No, you can't come, and this one and that, forth and so on. And then we went through the whole process, jumped through all the hoops to get in, and then we were told we can only meet with the leadership of the AACC, not the full body. But the representative could go in and talk to them. But we, Dr. Ojatuko, the head of the Boston Public Health Commission, she couldn't go, and I couldn't, but we could just meet with. So we regrouped and we did, and it ended up not such a bad thing because we had an honest conversation about the challenges of getting health information, of being able to proactively address your health, your physical conditions, to get the information to address diabetes and other kind of things like, K2, different things that they were dealing with post the pandemic because of people's mental health, right? So with all that said, we learned some of the real challenges that they're having, and we're committed to being able to now go back and forth to be able to address those challenges for health equity within sides, very specifically MCI Norfolk, because that setting's a different setting than some other. And help me to understand it, because I don't totally, but I understand that the framework of MCI Norfolk as a community place and the Liberty, like it's a campus, it's different.
Well, I mean, it's still prison.
I mean, it is.
It's the
clearly.
best. It's best facility that you can go to get the best programming, education, and freedom as much as you can.
As much as you can.
Like in other institutions, you can't just sign out and just go to the yard or walk around or go out all day. It's mandated to certain parts of the prison and stuff to that extent. So Norfolk is a little bit more. It was built to be a community prison. That's not necessarily what it is anymore.
Okay.
There's been a lot of changes to it, but it's the most access to freedom that you're gonna get, unless you go to a pre-release or a minimum. That's a medium security prison, right? I don't even like to say freedom, but I mean just more access to humanity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So MCI Norfolk was built by a sociologist who was like a Harvard professor, I think.
Really?
Yeah, and he kind of built it for the purpose of being not like other prisons. I mean, I think the concept was that if you treat people different, they act different, right? And one thing I think is important, because we talked about mentality of they're there to be punished. I think when they first started that experiment, they wouldn't take guards from the old Charles Street, which is where all guards came from. The guards that went to that space had to be brand new, right out of the academy, not influenced by the old mentality of the guards. And
makes sense.
And like Bobby said, it's not the same as it always was.
Right.
But it was a space that promoted like community. It promoted family. It promoted it really promoted. You would have barbecues there. You'd have family unification days there. There was a lot of stuff that's transpired there before that don't transpire now. The reason that Norfolk has like a lot of you would notice like a lot of men that are coming out of the prisons who are doing great work, even women now, because Norfolk's the only prison that actually has a transgendered population.
Oh.
Yeah, so they actually have a population of transgendered.
Wow.
And when I was there, they had a unit for transgendered. And they even had one person transition from there to the women's prison in Norfolk.
Wow.
But it's more like I said, that's the type of stuff you would never see happening or even considered, right, in any other prison setting that I've ever known, I've ever been in, that happens in MCI Norfolk. But they also promote like you spoke about the African American Coalition Committee. I was in Norfolk for 8 years, and I rose from being coffee making at AACC to co-chair of the AACC.
You were?
Yeah. So I was there from the total duration of my incarceration.
Wow. I
didn't lead only in RJ. I also led in the AACC.
Okay.
But Norfolk, and you're elected by your peers. That's the most powerful thing about it. Dude, like, you know what? We want. They didn't call me Armand then, but we want Armand to be our leader, and we're gonna put it before the membership, and they're gonna vote.
Nice.
And it's a beautiful thing when you see people who are, because I might look old, but there's some elders in there, right? And they trust in the direction of that organization in your hands. That's empowering. That's empowering. Yeah, and it's empowering.
It's
empowering, and it's even transformative, because like it literally like handing it to you, like, oh, here you go.
Wow.
We believe in y'all. Keep it moving
wow.
forward. And so that's been but again, just the fact that we talk about prisoners that can't vote, right? You can't vote in Norfolk.
Yep. Let's circle back to voting, and that's what makes Norfolk unique. So please explain that.
Yeah. So you said you cannot.
You can vote. So you vote as a minority, majority, and Latino camp chairman that represents part of the population to talk to the administration.
Right.
And the incarcerated people elect a person to talk to the actual administration for the population. When things go wrong or they need something, they elect one person to be the spokesperson for that part for the population. And they have a voting process in MCI Norfolk. Nowhere else that they have that. And that changes the demographic drastically, because when there's issues, at least you have somebody. They actually sit down with the superintendent, have superintendent meetings, all that. There's a spokesperson for each individual. I don't know if you. I cut you off. I'm sorry, but you can break it down better.
He's 100% correct. It's called the Norfolk Inmate Council.
Okay.
So the Norfolk Inmate Council consists of representatives for the black population, the Latino population, the Asian population. And did I say white population?
Not yet, but
and the white population, right? But there's also committees. So the African Coalition Committee is a committee that sits under the council. So the minority population, or aka the black pop, what they call the black pop, they vote for their leaders. You know, and the same thing with the Latinos, same thing with the whites. They vote for leaders, and they have different committees that actually serve those populations. And to boot, every unit in MCI Norfolk has a representative. Like, so I was a unit rep for my last 5 years at MCI Norfolk, where literally the 72 men in the block would vote for me to be their representative. And my responsibility was to report to the co-camp chairman. At the time, Allah Fuquan was the co-camp chairman, and he wanted to build a coalition of representatives who were on one accord. And literally, so he was like, so we worked together. I spoke to my population. They voted me in. They also charge you with like buying products for the unit. So it's like a totally like it's any other place in the DOC. I say, yo, I want y'all to vote for me. I'm gonna lead y'all. I'll be in the hole. I'll be locked up. Literally, I was in STG units for 7 years because they said I was a leader. Wow. Right? And it wasn't even public. I didn't even vote for it, but they said they thought I was. They suspected I was. So and you went to segregation for it, right? Wow. But
so explain what STG is.
It's a security threat group. So if you thought of being a security threat group, you would automatically be placed in a 23 lockup, 23 and 1, 23 hours locked in your cell, 1 hour out of your cell. And you only get 1 hour out of your cell 5 days a week. Wow. Right? So literally, that's what Bobby, that's what Bobby was telling you about when talking about refabricating prisons, they refabricate isolation. They say, oh no, you're not in solitary confinement, you're not in isolation, but we're going to put you in an STG unit. When in reality, you get less time in an STG unit than you in solitary confinement. You get less time out of your cell, right? Wow. So, but that's literally things that happen. Wow. And again, I think the easy way for that to be solved is to demand access to the prisons. Is demand access to the prison. Period, point blank. Like you said, it's so hard for us to get into prisons. We go to other states, they want us to go in their prisons. Like, yo, just come on in. I'm like, literally, they open the door to bring you in.
So you can go to other states, just not in Massachusetts.
First of all, the state is the one who denies you to go in. It ain't a law that you can't go in. It's about like Bobby said, politics. It's a political climate. I went to San Quentin, and it was like the superintendent was so happy that we was there. Like, oh my God, we need programming here. We need guys like y'all here. You'll come in. And they were trying to get us to commit to coming out there every month, but we was like, nah, we ain't doing that. We can't do it. But they literally wanted us to do programming that we did in Norfolk in their prison. But we just couldn't do it. We didn't have the resources to do it. But Norfolk, to my point, Norfolk's like a different animal. You could be anything you want to be in Norfolk. You want to be a minister, you could be a minister. You want to be a politician, you could be a politician. You want to be, professor, you could be a professor, tutor, mentor. It could be whatever you want to be here. Within reason, right? Within reason. So not anything. Let me take that. We pull back on that a little bit. It just has different accessibilities to different things. And every year that I was there, they were pulling back and taking more. And from my understanding, by the grace that I wasn't there for COVID, I think I wouldn't have made it. I heard they pulled back at in mass a lot of stuff, and they use COVID as the
Excuse.
yeah, as the excuse to actually do that. And it's a continuum. It continues to happen and happen and happen.
Unfortunately, believe it or not, brothers, we're at the top of the hour again. But thank you, Brother Armand. Thank you, Brother Bobby. Thank you, TPP. Thank you, our listening and viewing audience. This is just the beginning of many conversations. But we do have to go. And so God said the same. We'll see you for Healing Our Land Tuesday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday evening, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Good night.
Good night.